On a rainy night in 2024, what seemed like a routine car crash led deputies into a shocking and dark discovery. Christopher Beale, intoxicated and confused, was the driver of a silver Impala that crashed into a light pole. But as the night unfolded, it became clear that the crash was only the beginning of a much more sinister tale. Beale's chilling recollections hinted at something far darker, something that would lead deputies straight to a gruesome crime scene. What happened inside that apartment? How did a simple accident spiral into a murder investigation? You won't believe the terrifying truth that emerged that night. Car crash. On a rainy spring night in 2024, deputies from the Scott County Sheriff's Office responded to a car crash just 7 miles north of downtown Davenport, Iowa. The crash involved a silver Impala that had struck a concrete median before crashing into a light pole. When deputies arrived at the scene, they found the driver, Christopher Beale, beginning to regain consciousness. Fortunately, he appeared uninjured, though he was incoherent. The distinct smell of alcohol was coming from both the vehicle and Beale himself. Beale seemed confused.
Look at me. Are you alright?
Yeah.
You're in an accident. Do you know that?
No.
Where were you heading to? Do you know where you're at all or anything? Wait, where were you heading, you think?
The auditorium.
The auditorium?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Christian.
Chris? Chris Ian?
Chris Levy.
Oh, okay.
Unable to explain where he was or how he got there. He mentioned he might have been headed to an auditorium, but his answers were unclear. At one point, he suggested he was at a hospital, even though he wasn't. Deputies found a knife near his feet, which raised further concern. Although his injuries appeared minor, the presence of the knife was suspicious. Despite these signs of intoxication, the deputies initially treated the situation as a standard case of driving under the influence. Little did they know, what seemed like a simple accident would soon take a much darker turn. The mystery surrounding the crash would unfold, leading them to a gruesome discovery later that night. Grim discovery. As deputies continued their investigation, the situation took a shocking turn. Beale, still under the influence, had a sudden shift in his behavior. He started asking strange questions, expressing concern about his girlfriend Taylor, who lived with him at the Crestview Apartments. He wondered aloud if she was okay, mentioning unsettling thoughts about possibly harming her. Deputies were alarmed by these statements, particularly when Beale referred to images in his head of a violent attack involving a baseball bat. The officers had already attempted to check on Taylor at her apartment, but their knock had gone unanswered. At Beale's insistence, they decided to return to the apartment to ensure her safety. When they arrived at the unit, the door was unlocked, but resistance was felt from the other side. As they pushed it open, they found Taylor's lifeless body just inside the doorway. Taylor had been brutally attacked, sustaining nearly 60 injuries from a combination of a baseball bat, knife, and screwdriver. The scene in the apartment showed signs of a violent struggle, with blood splattered across various rooms. It became evident that this was no accident. The horrific discovery confirmed the deputies' worst fears. What started as a simple car crash had led to a grisly murder, and Beale was now the prime suspect. Unsettling recollections. As Beale was taken to the hospital for treatment, his memory of the events leading up to the crash and the discovery of Taylor's body remained unclear. His statements to the deputies were fragmented and confusing. He admitted to being intoxicated but seemed unable to recall much of the night's events. When asked about the knife found in his car, he expressed confusion, unsure of how it got there, though he vaguely mentioned a reason for it being in the vehicle. In the hospital, as his condition improved, Beale began to show signs of concern about Taylor's well-being. He repeatedly asked if she was alive, insisting that deputies check on her. He described disturbing mental images of possibly harming her, including the possibility of having struck her with a baseball bat. Despite not having any clear recollections, Beale's increasing anxiety and insistence that something had gone terribly wrong raised suspicions. As his memory began to come back in fragments, Beale admitted to having violent thoughts and recalled brief moments of interaction with Taylor before the attack. His statements hinted at guilt, though he continued to distance himself from the brutal actions, expressing disbelief that he could have committed such an atrocity. The question of whether he truly did not remember or was attempting to cover up his actions loomed large as detectives dug deeper into his recollections. Crime scene. At the Crestview Apartments, Law enforcement uncovered a horrific crime scene that confirmed the dark suspicions surrounding Christopher Bill's involvement. The scene inside the apartment was nothing short of chilling. When deputies and detectives entered the apartment, they found Taylor's lifeless body in the doorway. The brutal nature of the attack was immediately apparent, as nearly 60 injuries were discovered on her body, caused by a combination of weapons including a baseball bat, a knife, and a screwdriver. The struggle had not been confined to one area. Bloodstains were scattered across multiple rooms, from the hallway to the kitchen and into the living room. It was clear that Taylor had fought for her life as the attack unfolded throughout the apartment. In the kitchen, law enforcement found the tip of a screwdriver near the sink, while a bloody baseball bat was left on the couch. The knife that had been removed from the vehicle earlier was found in the apartment as well, with DNA testing confirming it had been used in the attack. The apartment, which once seemed like a simple living space, now stood as a grim testament to the violence that had occurred. Evidence suggested that the attack was prolonged, with Taylor possibly moving from room to room as she tried to escape or defend herself. The location of the weapons also raised questions. Why did Beale choose to use multiple weapons during the attack? Was there a specific order, or did his anger escalate over time? The fact that Beale had moved from room to room, following Taylor as she attempted to flee, only added to the evidence that this was a planned and deliberate act of violence. The absence of forced entry into the apartment indicated that Taylor had known her attacker. There was no sign of a struggle at the door, suggesting she had likely opened it for Beale. The absence of any sign of a cleanup in the apartment only reinforced the notion that this was a violent crime committed in the heat of the moment. The sheer brutality and the number of injuries indicated that this was not a spur-of-the-moment decision, but rather a calculated outburst fueled by something darker. Trial outcome. Christopher Beale's trial for the first-degree murder of Taylor was filled with emotional testimonies and conflicting stories. The defense argued that Beale, heavily intoxicated, was not in the right state of mind to premeditate or form intent to kill. They suggested that he was too drunk to remember his actions, implying that the murder was not a planned act, but rather a tragic result of his impaired judgment. However, the prosecution painted a different picture. They emphasized the brutality and deliberation behind the murder. The physical evidence suggested that the attack had been extended, with multiple weapons used and a clear movement through different areas of the apartment, proving that Beale had ample opportunity to stop. The state argued that his actions were intentional, pointing out that the use of 3 different weapons and the movement around the apartment showed planning and malice. In the end, the jury convicted Beale of first-degree murder after less than 2 hours of deliberation. They also found him guilty of domestic abuse assault with the intent to inflict serious injury. Beale was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a sentence that would be handed down at a hearing scheduled for May 2025. Taylor's family, especially her mother Lisa, expressed their grief and vowed to continue honoring her memory, surrounded by the love and support of their community. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, the gruesome truth about Taylor's death was slowly revealed. What started as a simple car accident turned into a chilling murder mystery that still haunts those involved. Christopher Beale's fate was sealed in court, but the questions surrounding his actions remain. How did a night meant to be spent in peace spiral into something so tragic? To explore another dark case that will keep you on the edge of your seat, don't miss our next video, The Sinister and Chilling Case of George Henry Lamson. This tale of betrayal and murder will leave you questioning the true nature of justice. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss out on more shocking stories.